Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and I Read, Therefore I Am is the booktuber's proof of consciousness. Whether or not I'm just a simulation program to believe that, I'll leave up to you. Now, consciousness is a popular topic within science fiction, whether that is exploring the nature of human consciousness, the future of human consciousness, or the possibility of non-human consciousness, such as artificial intelligence or aliens. So I have picked 5 sci-fi books where one of the primary themes is consciousness, and I'll do my best to avoid any major plot spoilers, but I will be talking about some of the ideas discussed in these novels. So let's get into them, starting with Blindsight by Peter Watts. In Blindsight, a transmission is detected in space, and a crew is put together to inspect it. And on this spaceship, we have a crew, a cast of characters with varying types of intelligence. We have a man who had brain surgery that left him unable to connect to his emotions. We have a genetically reincarnated vampire, a woman with multiple personalities, and the ship itself is artificially intelligent. And one of the book's themes is distinguishing between intelligence and consciousness, with the Chinese room thought experiment used as an example. If someone who doesn't know the language of Chinese is locked in a room and presented with a rule book on how to match different Chinese symbols with other symbols, you could write a note to them on a piece of paper, slide it under the door, and they could look at that and then use the rule book in order to match these symbols with other symbols in order to write a message back. And this could give the appearance of understanding Chinese without actually understanding anything that is being read or written. And this highlights the difficulty of differentiating between intelligence and consciousness when attempting to communicate with a mysterious or foreign alien entity. The book shows examples of how consciousness can be beneficial, such as improved communication, empathy, or aesthetic appreciation. However, the cosmic horror present in the book comes from the suggestion that consciousness may not be necessary or even beneficial. Consciousness may just be an evolutionary quirk, or perhaps even curse, which leads to slower decision-making, irrational behavior, and isn't something that makes humans special. In fact, humans may even start to evolve or devolve towards sociopathic philosophical zombies. The title of the book, Blindsight, comes from the name for a neurological condition where someone that is blind can respond to visual stimuli without being consciously aware that they are seeing. And this helps to distinguish between perception and awareness, and reinforces this idea that consciousness may not be the most efficient way of processing things, and reframes this idea of what makes us humans think we're special. And this is a rather bleak and nihilistic outlook. Personally, I'd rather try to appreciate the benefits of consciousness, and I do rather hope that we are not on the path to an emotional death and cold intelligent efficiency. But I do appreciate the fact that Watts made me question certain assumptions about consciousness. Next up, A Fire Upon the Deep by Vernor Vinge. The setting for A Fire Upon the Deep involves the Milky Way being divided into 4 zones of thought. Those being the unthinking depths, the slow zone, the beyond, and the transcend. Each zone has fundamental differences when it comes to the laws of physics, and this can affect the development of intelligence. The innermost zone has barely any form of intelligence, whether technological or biological, and the outermost zone is home to superintelligent, transcendent beings. The book doesn't differentiate between intelligence and consciousness, but it does imply that species in the outer zones are capable of greater levels of conscious awareness and experience. And an interesting implication of this setting is that consciousness isn't innate to a species, but rather it is environmentally dependent. It also suggests that consciousness isn't a binary experience, but is something that exists on a spectrum, and its point on the spectrum is not a fixed one. The way in which someone experiences consciousness can vary depending on their physical location. This is interesting to think about when comparing human consciousness to other species such as animals or aliens. Where might they be on the spectrum in relation to humans? As far as I know, human consciousness isn't affected by your place in space and time, but who knows? Maybe one day we'll be able to travel far enough to find out. And for our next book, The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor. The premise for The Mountain in the Sea revolves around a species of octopus that may have developed its own language and culture. The book suggests that consciousness exists on a scale, and it's possible to evolve along that scale. It then asks, how would humans and octopuses interact with each other once they became aware of each other's consciousness? Now, something that affects this is the biology of each species. The way that octopuses perceive the world is very different to humans. For example, they have 8 arms which they use to interact with their surroundings, and these arms may be decentralized and semi-independent. So, how differently would a creature like this think compared to humans which have a singular sense of self? The book also explores how difficult it may be to communicate with another species, seeing as language can be informed by what senses you have, the tools with which you use to communicate, and the way that different symbols could have different meanings to different species. And as well as octopus intelligence, the book also discusses artificial intelligence. It proposes advanced ways of developing artificial intelligence to a point which suggests the possibility of consciousness. And so both these forms of intelligence challenge the reader to consider where on the spectrum of consciousness deserves the same moral consideration that we give to human consciousness. Personally, I love animals and don't particularly care for robots. But perhaps robot consciousness in the future will develop to the point where we have to start being a little bit nicer. Alright, moving on, we have Permutation City by Greg Egan. Permutation City is about a man trying to create eternal life through virtual reality. Our main character successfully creates digital copies of himself and then tries to sell the option for people to have copies made of themselves so that they can live on through a virtual afterlife. An interesting aspect of this is, depending on how much computing power someone can afford, they may experience faster or slower virtual reality and may even be frozen completely. The very ways in which you think and consciously experience the world could be affected by your finances. However, Permutation City also suggests that not only can consciousness be programmed by computers, but there is no difference between the physical and the mathematical. All mathematical structures that are possible exist in one universe or another, are all equally real, and can spontaneously emerge. The implication of this is that once a pattern has been created, virtual or not, a person's consciousness could continue to live on even after the VR processor has been terminated and deleted. All universes exist, and consciousness exists where there are observers to experience the arrangements of those universes. The book refers to this as dust theory. If you could reduce a person's consciousness down to its most fundamental particles, these so-called pieces of dust could appear anywhere, either physically or mathematically, purely based on their own self-consistency. A booktuber reads, therefore they exist. If a mathematical structure is possible, it exists as well. This is the hardest sci-fi book in today's video, and I did my best to give you a simplification of the concepts. However, Greg Egan can do a much better job than I can, so go read Permutation City. It's one of the most mind-blowing books I have ever read. And finally, Solaris by Stanislav Lem. Solaris is a first contact novel about a research team attempting to understand a seemingly intelligent ocean on an alien planet. And Lem takes an interesting approach to alien consciousness, as the book is less about what alien consciousness could look like, and more so about how limited humans may be in any attempt to understand it. Human consciousness is so rooted in human biology, history, and culture that we might not even be able to comprehend alien consciousness through a human lens. Concepts such as emotions or intentions might not even be applicable to an alien entity. Lem hints at the biological and technological limitations of humans, making aliens fundamentally unknowable to us. And that's a scary thought, because even if we did discover sentient life in the universe, we would essentially still be alone. Perhaps a positive idea you can take from this framing of consciousness is the reminder that consciousness is internal. Life as a human isn't just about perceiving the world, it's also about awareness and understanding. And perhaps rather than trying to understand something outside our own experience, we would be better off acknowledging and reconciling our experiences, even the ones we've tried burying deep down. So there you go, those are 5 sci-fi books about consciousness. But there's plenty more, so let me know some of your favorites in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs like Nima, Anu Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, and the unconscious Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.